talk now about the Chinese economy. New data showing it continued to rebound last year, but there are some areas of concern. Our business editor, Stephen Carroll, Cole Stangler, do apologise. Cole Stangler is with us today. Cole, give us the latest.
Yeah, these new figures coming in from the National Bureau of Statistics, they showed the economy grew by a whopping 8.1% last year. As expected, that's higher than the state's official 6% growth target. One of the main drivers here was exports. Industrial output is up, and with the global economy recovering, there's plenty of demand for Chinese goods overseas. That's the bright spot. On the other hand, the Chinese economy did slow down over the final 3 months of the year. As you can see there, growth coming in at just 4% when compared to the same stretch in 2020. There are a lot of reasons for the slowdown. Sluggish retail sales, regulatory crackdowns, and measures to contain COVID have all played a role, as the head of the National Statistics Office alluded to earlier today.
As we heard, no shortage of factors holding up growth.
Yeah, one of the big ones, domestic demand, which has been somewhat lagging. Retail sales only grew slightly when compared to 2020. Chinese consumers aren't spending nearly as much as the government would like. Now, the real estate sector is also cooling off after a long boom. The state's been trying to tighten up regulation. That's ramped up pressure on a handful of deeply indebted firms, most notably Evergrande, which is still at the brink of defaulting, a story we've covered quite a bit here. Then, of course, there's the pandemic. As you can see there, China has its famous zero COVID policy, meaning authorities haven't hesitated to impose lockdowns or relatively small outbreaks. Just last month, the city of Xi'an was locked down. There are obviously public health considerations here, but shutting down a city of 13 million people, not good for the economy. So that's also showing up in the growth figures as well.
So what's expected this year then?
Well, policymakers are clearly concerned about the factors we just mentioned. It's why China's central bank also announced cuts in 2 different sets of interest rates today. These moves weren't expected by many analysts, but they do show authorities are worried about a slowdown. And, it's so hard to predict growth anywhere with COVID, but that's one of the big wild cards with China in particular, just because of how stringent these lockdown measures have been. Just last week, for instance, the bank Goldman Sachs cut this year's growth forecast for the country from 4.8 to 4.3%, precisely because of Omicron and the high cost of restrictions to contain it. Don't forget, you also have the Winter Olympics coming to Beijing next month. Authorities certainly want to avoid outbreaks during the games, and the zero tolerance policy expected to last at least until the fall, when the Communist Party's National Congress takes place. So, Stuart, it's hard to know what the pandemic will look like by then, but either way, it'll certainly be leaving its mark on the recovery in China.
Cool. Thanks very much. Cole Stangler.